Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome into Green Dot Daily live from the Tommy John studio in New York City. I am your host, Charlie DiSturco, and here's what we've got coming up on the show. Postseason baseball is in full effect. We've got the Tigers and Astros in progress right now, and 3 more wildcard games on the slate. It's no March Madness, but we've got afternoon baseball getting us through the workday. It can't get better than that. Friend of the program and the Ringer staff writer, Anthony Dabbundo, hops on to talk postseason futures and a best bet for tonight's slate on the diamond. And today is actually the last day without college football or the NFL until Thanksgiving Eve. But that won't stop us from breaking down the upcoming slate. Brett McMurphy and Collin will discuss Ashton Jeanty's soar up the Heisman leaderboards and dish out a couple of best bets for the upcoming weekend. Mike Calabrese also hops on to simulate the top 25 bout between Texas A&M and Missouri as well. But let's start out on the diamond and take a look at how the postseason bracket stands. The Tigers looking to put away the Astros after upsetting them in Game 1. They're in progress right now. 3 other teams, the Royals, Mets, and Padres, hold a 1-game lead over their opponents. A reminder that this is a best of 3 series, and funny enough, the winner of Game 1 has won every single series since the 2022 expansion in the Wild Card playoffs, as we now welcome in from the Ringer, Anthony Dabbundo, friend of the program, coming back to Green Dot Daily, joining me. First off, Anthony, how are you? How are you enjoying the baseball?
Loving it. Just basically have nothing on my evening schedule for tonight. Just going to sit on the couch and watch multiple baseball games at the same time, which is how this 3-game set was designed to be. And I'm enjoying it. And I'm also glad to be back, making my pilgrimage back to the Action Network to do some baseball talk. Nothing better than playoff baseball, talking it on Green Dot Daily. And I was looking at that bracket. Mets and Phillies on a potential collision course here. We might not be friends for like a week or 2.
I know. Listen, you're coming on today for a reason, because it's before the stage of Mets Phils. If things have to get to that far, we might have to rebook you out after the fact of this series, or until if the Mets win, then you can come back on, because that's fine by me. And listen, hopefully it is Mets Phils. Get some friendly banter going. The best of 3 wild card, I mentioned it. 8 for 8 are teams that take the Game 1 lead. The only team to not win in 2 also, the San Diego Padres against the Mets back in 2022. So I got to ask you, Ant, of the 3 teams, obviously the Tigers and Astros are in progress, so we can't bet it right now. Milwaukee, Baltimore, and Atlanta. All 3 are down 0 games to 1. Which of these 3 do you think can right the ship and end this 100% rate of teams down 0-1 not winning?
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore, if you just go by the odds, would be the team. But, I mean, their offense looks like it's a bit of a mess right now. I mean, I think they rely on a lot of young guys that seem to have hit a bit of a wall here. And really, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've been one of the worst offenses in baseball. And, like, their pitching situation isn't that good. So I'm actually going to go with Milwaukee as the team most likely to turn it around. Oh. I know they're facing Sean Manaea today. I know you're probably not wanting to hear that. As a Phillies fan, I'm really hoping that series goes 3 games. But, Frankie Montas has really improved his metrics across the board since joining from Cincinnati. It's classic Brewers, right? They find this guy, they put him in their pitching lab, and all of a sudden his stuff looks better. He gets more strikeouts. His strikeout minus walk rate is way up. So pretty much everything you'd want to see from Montas is better. And it was weird because they used a lot of their bullpen early yesterday, but they still have multiple of their highest leverage relievers available. They did dominate the season series with the Mets, and I do think they'll be able to run more today. They didn't use the running game enough yesterday, despite all the base runners. I think that'll be a key part to watch, and I do think this series will go 3. So I think we'll get multiple Game 3s, but I think this one of the 3 still yet to play today is the most likely for Milwaukee to turn it around.
Right. It really felt like Milwaukee in general, though, they pulled Freddie Peralta pretty early. As soon as they pull him, the Mets jump all over the Brewers bullpen, which they have not been able to do, as you mentioned, throughout the entire season series. No Trevor McGill, no Devin Williams yesterday, so they will have those 2 arms in particular. Are you worried at all with Milwaukee? Obviously you mentioned the run game. Now it's a lefty. I know they ran a couple times on Manaea. The overusage of the pen, and now the Mets all of a sudden having the bad travel schedule, having a game and the day off where they didn't have to use any high leverage arms. Does that scare you at all, looking at this series?
It's hard to imagine game one going any better for the Mets, right? They got to the
Yeah.
pen early. They scored a bunch of runs. They overcame kind of any type of hangover from having to play, really high stress games all weekend and two on Monday, the travel as well. So it's hard to imagine if things couldn't have gone any better, but it's still one baseball game, right? And so we can't overreact to just one game. And I still have questions about the Mets back end relief. Even the high leverage guys haven't necessarily been nails in the last few weeks. And I don't know that you trust them, and I certainly don't either, compared to like McGill and Williams if the Brewers get there late. But also, we've seen Milwaukee. I mean, how many years in a row do we have to watch Milwaukee kind of underperform in the playoffs and then go, maybe they're not as good as we thought?
Listen, I know, dating back, I think it's like the last decade, any team that plays Milwaukee and beats them in the playoffs ends up winning the National League. That's kind of where we're at with the New York Mets right now. Or, I mean, if the Brewers come back from 0-1, the Philadelphia Phillies, I don't want to say that. I don't want to put that in the air.
Long way to go, Charlie. Long way to go.
But the New York Mets in particular, if they can win, the truth is on their side. But speaking of futures, looking at this as a whole, you do have an exact finalist future out in the National League. I feel like that's kind of the easier one to navigate through. So please tell me more about it.
I mean, we're only a few hours away from like Tigers, Guardians, and ALDS. And like, no disrespect to them, but like, is anyone that's not a Tigers or Guardians fan going to watch that? I don't know. It might be overshadowed by, Padres, Dodgers, and potentially Phillies, Mets. And we could get some really, barn burner series this weekend. But I do think that Phillies and Padres are playing as well as anybody in the National League. And the thing for them is the pitching depth and the pitching bullpens. Like the Phillies bullpen, one of the best in the league all year. San Diego, one of the best in the second half. Just elite run prevention units. And I think they actually will have advantages over their potential CS or DS opponents. So the Padres, of course, would play the Dodgers. The Dodgers don't really have a third or fourth starter right now. And that's going to be a problem. I think their bullpen is going to run into some real issues. So let's say they play in a 5-game series. If the Padres can just get a split in Los Angeles and then the series flips to San Diego, all of a sudden it's the Dodgers are going to have to piece together their pitching. I'm not sure how they get those outs. Their bullpen's good, but not as good as San Diego's. And so I think the Padres are in a good spot there. And then a potential Phillies-Mets series. Look, it's a divisional matchup. It's going to be a heated rivalry. They've played a ton in the last few weeks. But the Phillies also didn't – they won the season series 7-6, and Taijuan Walker started 3 of those games. And Colby Allard started one of them too. So the Mets actually avoided the Phillies' top pitchers a lot this year. I just think that the Phillies have a much deeper staff to overcome that. So I think they're the 2 best teams in the National League right now. I think they're going to meet in the championship series. So plus 320. I like that as the exacta series.
Yeah, it really, I mean, listen, I've been all over the Padres since right after the trade deadline. They went out and they got the pieces they needed. They spent for Tanner Scott. They spent for Jason Adam. Now they have arguably the best 6 through 9 in all of baseball. Like, you just need 5 innings from your starting pitching, and you can get even more than that. We saw Michael King, the upside of Dylan Cease. It really feels like this is, I don't want to say it's San Diego's to lose because they're in the wild card still. It's not like they even have a bye, but them getting far, and then you mentioned it, the Phillies, they've looked incredible all year. Every single year in the postseason, they've been getting to the CS. So definitely like this one in general. Hopefully you're wrong and the Mets can make the run. But listen, I'm happy with what they've done so far. They got to the playoffs. That's all I can ask for out of New York and this OMG squad. But we can't let you go, Anthony, without a best bet. So we're going to target the night game. It's Atlanta, San Diego. We got Musgrove on the mound against Max Fried, a total right around 7, 6.5, depending where you look. And you like the under despite it being such a low number.
Yeah, the scariest thing about San Diego is probably that they're your favorite baseball pundit's favorite baseball team. Like, I think everybody in the betting space has some ticket at some number on the San Diego Padres to win the National League. And, sometimes it works and everybody's happy and we all win, like Phillies 2 years ago. But like so much more often, it does feel like that team somehow comes up short in the most dramatic way possible. But it will be interesting to watch, especially if they do end up playing the Dodgers, which looks likely. Tonight, game 2. I do think that the Braves are much better set up to pitch tonight, right? They were in a really rough spot with Smith Shawver, has basically no MLB experience pitching last night, got blown up in the first couple innings, kind of had that game done by the third inning. But I do think Max Fried as a lefty projects better against this Padres lineup. I still have questions about how their lineup fares against left-handed pitching. And the Braves have the opportunity to spam lefties in the back of their bullpen as well, with Lee available as well. Like Bummer had some success against them last night. So I do think it's a better matchup for the Braves to be competitive. But I also think that this Atlanta offense is pretty much running on fumes now. They had to play so much baseball in the last week just to get in, and they have not been effective as an offense. They're very easy to pitch to right now, and they hunt spin and breaking balls, and Musgrove can just throw that fastball that's looked so much better in the last month. The velocity's been up on that. His numbers have looked so much better. So kind of surprised they took Musgrove over Cease. I think we're all like, why are they pitching Dylan Cease? But clearly they see something they like in this matchup, and they're rolling with it, and I trust them. So I go under 6.5, even money tonight.
Yeah, I mean, even you mentioned it, like the game felt over by the second, third inning, and the game still ended 4-0 Padres, and we talked about how good their bullpen is. The Braves also have a very talented bullpen as well. So it feels like if you can get to the, sixth or seventh, that even with 4 or 5, even 6 runs, you might even be able to get a shutout in general for this one. And yeah, it's really interesting. A complete 180. The Mets have had such a treacherous weekend travel schedule. They went from Milwaukee to Atlanta to Milwaukee, and they look spry. The Braves, they stayed in Atlanta the entire week and then went to San Diego. They look completely out of gas, but only time will tell based on how these teams perform in general. Anthony Dabbundo back on Green Dot Daily. We'll likely see you again soon, my friend. Hopefully when it's Phillies Mets. I'll talk to you soon.
I'm gonna bring my jersey on the show if we're in the middle of the series. So just so you know, just keeping that in the back of your mind.
No. Over to the land of college football, and the Heisman leaderboard looks much different than nearly 2 months ago. Dylan Gabriel, the preseason favorite, is down at 5th at 16-1. He's been replaced by none other than Jalen Milroe, fresh off a huge win against SEC rival Georgia last weekend. But perhaps most surprising has been the skyrocketing of Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty, both of which now sit inside the top 5 after beginning the season plus 6,500 and plus 150-1 respectively, which is a perfect segue to bring in Collin Wilson and Brett McMurphy to talk more about the college football week ahead. Guys, obviously, Ashton Jeanty is blowing up on social media. His over-under in yards is nearing 200. He's, I believe it's minus 155 to score 3 touchdowns this weekend against Utah State. He's literally putting up video game numbers if you put the sliders all the way in your favor and you're on rookie mode. But we have to talk about this little Heisman jump between Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. Both guys not quarterbacks. Normally, we see quarterbacks win the Heisman Award, but Travis Hunter, the dual threat corner, receiver, and then Jeanty, just the video game number running back. I'll kick it to you first, Collin. Between these two, who has the better path when it comes to a Heisman race?
Yeah, it's Travis Hunter by far. And, it's no fault of Ashton Jeanty himself, but he has a bar that is set much higher as a running back for him to win this award. First, he's got to break the all-time rushing record, which could be in scope. He's got to win the Mountain West. Boise has to win the Mountain West, and they have to secure a playoff spot. That is how high the bar is for Boise State to get enough recognition, to get enough PR, to be able to hang, to get to New York and get Ashton Jeanty this award. For Travis Hunter, it's a lot different. I mean, I think Colorado only has to win probably 8 games, be somewhat of a player in the Big 12 race. The fact that he's producing on both sides of the ball, critical turnovers that have added to the wins for Colorado, it's a much lower bar here for Travis Hunter. And the addition of a running game, which blew out Central Florida, you say, well, what does that have to do with Travis Hunter since he's a wide receiver and he plays in the secondary? That addition of the running game is going to help Colorado win more games in the Big 12, and that's going to get more attention for the PR machine that is the Buffaloes and Deion Sanders to put on Travis Hunter. So Travis Hunter is such a lower bar, and he's probably the better player.
It really feels like, Deion Sanders, obviously you mentioned just the hype train that is Colorado, so it makes sense that Hunter's getting all the attention, all the love. But Ashton Jeanty, I mean, he's on pace for over 2,500 yards, nearly 40 touchdowns. It's purely video game numbers. You can't ask for more from him. You'd expect teams to slow him down at some capacity at some point, just stack 10 in the box and be like, throw it on us one-on-one on the outside. Brett, your thoughts on this race too? Are you in agreement with Collin on Travis Hunter?
Yeah, and I think of all the things that Collin said, the biggest thing is the PR machine.
Yeah.
And Look, if you want to give it to the best player in college football, it's Travis Hunter, whether Colorado went 12-0 or 0-12. I mean, he's the best defensive back in the country. He's one of the top 5 receivers in the country. And oh, by the way, he plays 95% of the snaps every game. No player in the history of college football has done this since maybe, I don't know, when they kicked it off Rutgers and Princeton back in the 1890s. I remember it well. I was a sideline reporter back then. But Travis Hunter, he's doing something that's never been done before. And, I agree with Collin. I do think Colorado needs to get about 8 wins. I still think a lot of Heisman voters it'll be hard to stomach giving it to somebody on a 6-6 team. Unfortunately for Jeanty, 1, he's a running back. 2, he's in a non-power conference. The competition is not going to be as hard. Some people may, diminish his numbers because they're not against power opponents. Although, look, he will get a chance. He's already played Oregon. He's got Oregon State, Washington State coming up, but also television opportunities. Boise State is not going to have the same television opportunities as Colorado and Travis Hunter. And as great of a player Travis Hunter is, he also has the benefit of being with that Colorado hype machine that follows and goes everywhere Dion does. So I think, I've preached this from day one. Don't take any Heisman odds before you don't do any Heisman bets until you get to November. I would actually look at Travis Hunter right now. I really think it's his to win. I know Jalen Milroe just came off the game of the millennium. The SEC teams are going to beat each other up. They're going to shuffle down. There's no disputing Travis Hunter's talent. So it's just the question, can Colorado win enough games so he's considered by the, majority of Heisman voters?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a fair point. And my thoughts, early on in the season when Travis Hunter, starred, it was like, well, can Colorado win enough games for him to be considered? Because if they can, then all of a sudden it's a totally different story. I'm a Jalen Milroe ticket holder myself, so I was pretty excited about this Georgia game, but agree with you. It's such a gauntlet, the SEC, where a couple losses all of a sudden stain your record. It'll be interesting to see. The one thing he does have going for him is playing, obviously you mentioned, both sides of the football. The sheer amount of snaps definitely gives him a huge leg up based on non-quarterbacks in general. But let's shift gears, look ahead toward this weekend. One game in particular I think is super interesting is number 10 Michigan heading into Washington. Michigan is an underdog in this matchup. They have, obviously made the change with Orji at quarterback, and they've won every game since then. It wasn't a pretty win. I mean, they were up by a lot and then kind of choked away late against Minnesota, but still held on after a win against USC the week prior. Collin, I'll kick it to you first. Obviously, Michigan, an underdog with that ranked number. It kind of tells you maybe go Washington. Is that kind of the right approach here, or should better stay away?
I think that's the right approach. It really gave me some pause when I saw the number in this team go out, because at Action Network at our power ratings, we make Michigan a 2.5-point favorite on a neutral. But when you add in Husky Stadium, this is more of a pick, maybe 1 to the Washington direction. When you get into the advanced analytics and you put it on paper, there's just too many advantages that Washington's going to have defensively against Michigan. Now, we know Michigan and Alex Orji are not going to pass the ball whatsoever. That's good because Steve Belichick and the Washington Huskies are the #1 ranked defense as far as passing success rate goes against opponents. But the Huskies have also been extremely stiff against the rush, against the zone read option that Sharon Moore is going to call here against Washington. Also, Washington is top 10 in opponent red zone rush TDs allowed. They just don't allow anyone to bull them over next to the goal line. So we're banking on the leg of Gabe Gross, who kind of let us down against Rutgers. We're going to say that he gets it done here at home. I do like Washington in this game.
Yeah, this is a perfect segue to Brett, because Brett, this is your best bet of the weekend. You're in agreement with Collin here. As long as Gross doesn't miss, 2 to 3 field goals, it feels like Washington's a pretty safe play here.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be scoring touchdowns. They won't need to worry about field goals. Charlie, real quick, I know you're a big fan of Twitter. I know you're on Twitter frequently. I'm sure you saw yesterday on your left and right side of Twitter, my reporting on Gonzaga was vindicated. And like Gonzaga to the Pac-12, I have my best bet receipts. The last 3 weeks on Green Dot Daily: Arkansas State plus 24 against Michigan, winner. Tennessee -6 versus Oklahoma, winner. Kansas State -6 over Oklahoma State. I'd say chicken dinner, but I think that's patented by my boy Sammy P. Winner, winner, winner. I'm going with Washington -2.5. Collin laid it out defensively what the Huskies can do. Historically, unranked teams as a favorite against ranked teams is a very profitable situation. Washington did a good job containing Rutgers' run game. They outgained them by 200 yards. They had 2 first and goal situations. They had 0 points. If they win that game, this number may be closer to 4, 5, 6. I like Washington here. And also Michigan, we've talked about all the talent they lost. They've replaced them with a lot of young kids. Guess what? First 5 weeks of the season, they were in the friendly confines of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now they have to travel out west. First road game of the year. Give me the Huskies, and I'll go for 4 in a row.
Listen, I was just trying to give Collin the solace of not having to know that the last 2 weeks that you've had the edge on him.
I'm not here to bring Collin down. I'm all positive vibes. I'm looking at my record only.
Listen, I know that you are correct, Brett, and in more ways than one with Gonzaga as well over there on the X. Listen, I saw everyone was in full support of you, as was I. So great job on that one. And yes, you're on a hot streak right now on Green Dot Daily. We get it. Collin, you on the other hand, your best bet for this one is also out in the West Coast. It's Hawaii, San Diego State, and you like a total in this one.
Yeah, well, first off, Brett survived a hurricane. He's out for everybody right now, so get out of the also, this best bet segment, I was going to go with the Kansas City Royals. If you want to put them in an exacta beating the Mets in the World Series, you could do that too, but that's not my forte. We're going to stick to Hawaii, San Diego State on the under. We have a segment between Stuck and I called Nowhere Fast on the podcast on Thursdays because Aztec Fast is what they're being called. They like to get up and down the field, but they can't ever score any points. So they're going nowhere fast, and that's really what we're going to have here. Hawaii is extremely pass happy. They throw the ball a lot with the run and shoot, and San Diego State right now is 15th in coverage grading. They're going to be able to stop what Timmy Chang wants to do down the field. And San Diego State's Aztec Fast offense just has heavy ground tendencies. They like to run the ball a lot, and Hawaii right now is 7th in defensive havoc, and that is boasted by a tackles for loss number that is in the top 30 right now as far as averages, like 7 per game. So they're going to be all over that San Diego State rushing attack. When you look beyond that, San Diego State has been horrific in scoring position. They average 2.5 points on drives that extend past the 40-yard line. There's a real scoring issue going on with this Aztec Fast offense here. So we're going to take an under. Power rated about 5 points less, about 45. So let's go under 50.5.
Yes, and just a friendly reminder to always, check out the BBOC podcast that comes out during the week, multiple episodes, as well as Brett and Collin will be on the BBOC live show Saturday mornings at 10:30 Eastern for the rest of their picks for this week in general. And Collin, listen, if the Royals have to play the Mets this segment next time, you will not be on, or I won't be hosting. We won't be able to function together if I have to deal with 2015 times 2. But appreciate you both hopping on, and best of luck this weekend. Sticking to college football, let's take a look at what teams have started out the season red hot from an against the spread perspective, shall we? They say good teams win and great teams cover. Well, how about both? BYU soared inside the top 25 and lead the way with a stellar 5-0 record alongside Eastern Michigan. And despite quarterback Matthew Sluka leaving the UNLV program last week, we saw all the news about that. The Rebels took care of business and remain a perfect 4-0 against the spread, and it wasn't even close, as now we welcome in Mike Calabrese. We heard from Collin Wilson and Brett McMurphy about a little bit about the Heisman race between Jeanty and Travis Hunter. Well, how about the gambling Heisman, Calabrese? Let's talk. We're heading to New York City, say tomorrow. Who are the candidates that will be taking a seat before we end up dishing out the awards? Give me the 3.
All right, let's start with Nick Nash, the San Jose State wide receiver. If you had on your bingo card that a Ken Niumatalolo wide receiver would lead the nation in receptions and receiving touchdowns, you'd be a liar. But they are undefeated against the spread, as you pointed out. Their spread and shred offense is dynamic, and Nash just keeps getting better. He was a converted quarterback, and in the last 2.5 years, he's become an absolute tactician on the perimeter. He's somebody that is absolutely electric, and it's one of the reasons why San Jose State is one of the most enjoyable teams to watch from a betting perspective, because the public is late to the party. Even this weekend, they're laying just 6 against the Nevada Wolfpack. That's not enough. I think they're going to continue this hot streak and get to 5-0 against the spread.
All right, that's an interesting one in particular. I definitely can't believe a former quarterback is all of a sudden now just leading the nation in receptions and receiving touchdowns, and definitely deserves a seat at the gambling Heisman, because if you're betting San Jose State, you know the guy Nick Nash, not like most other college football names. That's the beauty of this gambling Heisman segment, that maybe these guys aren't names that you heard. And speaking of, Matthew Sluka kind of gave up his seat in New York City for another guy in this UNLV team. Who are you headed for the Rebels?
Now, it'd be easy for me talking UNLV to say the seventh wonder of the gambling world, the Haj Mahal, Haj Malik Williams. Yes, he's playing very well at quarterback in Sluka's stead, but I'm going to go defense because it's really what has been UNLV's calling card thus far this season. Their transfer safety, Jalen Catalon, has 4 picks on the season already and a pick 6. And the Rebs not only have covered every single game, they're covering by 24 points per game. That's first in the entire country. So his defense has earned a trip to the gambling Heisman final ceremony, and Jalen Catalon is my guy.
Yeah, and shout out Mike Iannello, the UNLV t-shirt. He's Arthur fist memeing over there in the background, probably watching this right now, because UNLV is unbelievable to start this season. And a date with Syracuse coming up this weekend, so we'll see how that one goes, if they can go 5-0 against the spread. The last one that deserves a seat at the Heisman table, at least for you right now in New York City, you're actually not going to a perfect team against the spread, but a surprise guy that has absolutely been on fire and turned around the Indiana program.
Curtis, the Maple Missile Rourke, coming down from Canada. He's a transfer at Indiana, playing for Curt Cignetti, and Curt Cignetti is an absolute run-it-up maniac. If you got a good number in their opener against FIU, they are 5-0 against the spread. If you relate to that party, they're 4-1, but they're covering by 2 touchdowns per game, second only to Tennessee among Power 4 teams. And Indiana's offense is a wagon. They're averaging 48.8 points per game. They're 5-0 for the first time since 1967. Oh, by the way, that's the last time that they went to the Rose Bowl, and Rourke is third nationally in QBR with 13 touchdowns already on the season. He has done absolutely everything to make Indiana relevant. So I know that we should just go purely by the numbers and it should be an undefeated team against the spread, but how can you not be impressed with the Hoosiers?
I mean, literally. And a MAC quarterback making the transfer to the Power 4, and then all of a sudden he's been absolutely incredible. IU in general, nobody saw this coming. But I have to ask you, because you mentioned it, right? It's like, oh, why don't we just throw the perfect teams against the spread? Nico out of Tennessee, not even going to try and pronounce his last name anymore. That's long gone. Perfect against the spread. Not only is he also a Heisman contender, like the Heisman contender, but I feel like he deserves maybe a seat at this table, or is he like, he deserves a seat at the table. Why did you have him off your short list of the top 3 seats in New York City right now?
All right, let's go down the list of Tennessee's wins. They beat Choo Choo Chattanooga, not impressed there. Kent State, who's arguably the worst FBS team, beat a team as a dog, or at least in a coin flip game. And then I will give Nico his flowers. A game coming up in October against Alabama. Whoever's smoking the cigars at the end of that game, I would consider a favorite for the gambling Heisman as well.
Yeah, I really thought Jalen Milroe would be up here, but then I looked back at the numbers and they didn't cover every single game. I believe it was USF, the one that they did not, but he's been absolutely dynamite, and of course deserves at least a look in the actual Heisman. But this is the beauty of the gambling Heisman, is that he wasn't perfect against the spread. He hasn't come out of nowhere. He is just, the starting quarterback for Alabama football, so it makes sense. And those 3 seats, we'll talk to you again more throughout the entire season about the gambling Heisman updates. But for now, Mike Calabrese getting the 3 seats at the table right now. Nick Nash out of San Jose State, perfect 4-0 against the spread. Same with Jalen Catalon out of UNLV, a defensive potential Heisman for the Rebels, who are also perfect in the wake of Matthew Sluka. And then Curtis, the Maple Missile Rourke, Indiana, turning around the program behind the Maple Missile. So those are the 3. Let's shift gears a little bit more now to actual gambling and actual picks that we can give out to help the fans listening at home. Let's look at your NCAA football simulation, shall we, to help try and break down a top matchup between Texas A&M at home against number 9 Missouri. Both teams 4-0 in their last 4. A&M obviously has a loss to start the season against Notre Dame. What did the simulations tell you on this one? Are we riding with the slight home favorites in A&M?
So A&M pulls this out. They don't cover the number, though. A&M winning 23-21 on a walk-off 47-yard field goal by Randy Bond. This was a game of missed opportunities for Mizzou. They got an early long touchdown from Luther Burden III, so it seemed like everything was going in their direction. Then they get a turnover, but A&M bowed their neck. The Wrecking Crew defense ends up stopping them in the red zone, and they miss a chip shot field goal. On the day, the Tigers only scored 3 points off of turnovers, and in the second half, it was a running clinic by the Aggies. They finished with 197 yards rushing. Moss had 96. Daniels, their second back, had 54. And Reed, getting the start once again over Connor Wiegman, had 47 yards rushing. And when the chips were down and they needed a drive in the final minute, he helps them, goes 3 for 5, passing through the air, 50 yards on that final drive, set up a 42-yard field goal. A little bit of nerves for the special teams. They get a false start. Don't worry, Bond banged it through from 47 yards at the buzzer for the Aggies to win.
That's really interesting. And the best available number right now, I'm not going to say it's just 2. It's 2. It's out there. There's a 2 out there, so you can get the push if you want to back the simulations. And yeah, it also feels like obviously the total. I'm curious your thoughts overall on this game, if you agree with it. The under kind of seems like the smarter play. I watched the A&M Arkansas game last week, and A&M's defense really impressed me after that first drive. They gave up a long touchdown, but other than that, were pretty spectacular throughout. A fake punt put Arkansas in opportunity for their second touchdown, but feels like a lower scoring game we're going to get here in this one.
It's been just an off season for Mizzou. They came in with a soft schedule, but then playing BC and Vandy, they kind of went through the motions. They almost got snake bit against a Vandy team that is no longer sneaking up on teams this season. We'll see what they do against Alabama on Saturday. But at some point you have to say, is the Missouri offense broken? And against an A&M defense at home with that rowdy crowd, I think it's totally reasonable to go with an under here. The simulation on the season has been more accurate on totals. So if I were to make a play based off of what College Football 25 has to say, I'd go under.
Yeah, College Football 25, maybe not the best with spreads right now, but they started out hot. But, negative regression has to come for even the simulations on a video game. We talk, trying to predict the game on simulations. We talked the gambling Heisman, so we need a best bet for you before we let you go. And you're targeting Nick Nash and the San Jose State. They're favored at home against Nevada. Tell me why we're going to fall in love with this San Jose State team, and they're going to continue to be perfect, ATS.
It's all about the spread and shred. As I mentioned, Niumatalolo ditched the triple option, all those years of success in Annapolis with the Naval Academy. He says, nope, I'm going to go to an air raid, brings in Craig Stutzman. This offense is cooking. Their quarterback, Emmett Brown, is averaging over 320 yards per game through the air, 13-4 touchdown to interception ratio. And Nevada, I do have to say this. The expectation, at least coming in for Coach Choate, was that this was going to be a year zero, potentially a winless year as he tried to get the right pieces in the portal. That has not been the case at all. They nearly upset SMU, who's proven to be a really feisty team out of the ACC this year in their opener. And since then, they've cashed a few wins. They've looked competent on both sides of the ball, but their calling card has been stopping teams in the red zone. They're top 25 in defensive touchdown percentage allowed inside their own 20. The problem is that San Jose State, not only can they spread you out, but they have great red zone offensive packages. 16 trips for the Spartans, 12 touchdowns in those scenarios. So I think that's going to be the difference here. They're ending in the end zone on their drives where the Wolfpack are settling for 3. As long as it's under that key number of 7, I like SJSU at home as a favorite.
Can SJSU end up being a perfect 5-0 and keep Nick Nash's gambling Heisman seat still alive? Only time will tell. But until then, Mike Calabrese, appreciate you hopping on. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it.
And here's the latest from Adam Schefter on the Davante Adams trade train. Davante Adams' wish list at the top have been none other than, as you'd expect, the New York Jets and his old buddy Aaron Rodgers. A reunited group between the two would be much aplenty. And then the New Orleans Saints, Derek Carr, former teammate of the Vegas Raiders. Those two teams atop Davante Adams' wish list when it comes to being traded. Schefter did also add that one team not expected to be involved is the Kansas City Chiefs, but he just says that, and things can change over the course of 24, 48 hours, what have you, as we welcome in Brandon Anderson to talk more about this Davante Adams trade extravaganza that's been going on. Brandon, we're going to draft teams. You're going to give me the best spot you think he's going to end up in. I'm going to come back at you a little bit from time to of time. I hope you do the same here. It's supposed to be fun. We're talking about Davante Adams, an all-pro receiver, ending up in one of the best situations possible. So I'll kick it to you first. Where are you headed for your first pick for Davante?
Yeah, I mean, number one is pretty chalk here, right? Like, this could be like a one-team draft. If we're really being honest, it's got to be the Jets, right? The Aaron Rodgers buddy reunion tour. Look, Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson would be sick. Like, that would be so much fun. And the truth is, they need him, right? They actually need the help. Their weapons have been really lacking. I think Breece Hall has been pretty disappointing, especially for fantasy owners out there. But receiving-wise, Garrett Wilson's great. No problems with Garrett Wilson. The problem is, the defense knows that too, and that's really the only guy they have to worry about. So instead, we're getting like 5, 6, 7 targets a game to Allen Lazard. Do we even remember he was in the league while Rodgers was hurt? Like, this is just a guy that is buddies with Rodgers, so he's there. Mike Williams is injured. He's not really doing much. They need another guy. We know how Rodgers likes his guys. We know, like, that's the whole concept. The Jets are already in on the Rodgers experience. They're in on this team. They need some help. It just seems too obvious, right?
It really does. Listen, I can't push back too much on this one. Like, it really feels like Hackett's there in New York for a reason, Aaron Rodgers. So them getting Davante Adams makes sense. They need the help for Garrett Wilson. You're right. He's been extremely quiet in the opening weeks. But again, when you're completely the sole focus of this offense, taking away him, you're left with Allen Lazard. You're not going to be left with much. Mike Will, I will add, has looked better. He's looking like he's getting healthier. But again, having him as just a deep threat alongside Adams and Wilson will add a completely different element to this Jets offense. And yeah, I think that this one's the pretty obvious and one. We could have just ended the video right here. All right, he's going to the Jets. But how about another team in the AFC East? I'm actually really intrigued by the Buffalo Bills, and I don't know if they can fit this with their cap and stuff, but it feels like Davante Adams going to the Buffalo Bills is like the final infinity stone for Thanos. We have Josh Allen's legs. We have Khalil Shakir, who's been great. The safety valve of Dalton Kincaid. James Cook has been terrific. It feels like the last guy left is developing and having a wide receiver one. Matt Collins is not it. Like, the guy's running around barefoot and not catching passes. They need a guy like Davante Adams that can come in, cement himself for 100-plus yards a game. We know what Diggs is capable. We saw with Diggs what Allen is capable with a real wide receiver one. I think they need that to just take their offense to the next level. I mean, listen, they don't even need him, and they're probably one of the best teams in football, but getting him takes to another level. So I think the Buffalo Bills here could, if they can kind of make it work with the cap, that addition of Davante Adams takes them to, the Super Bowl favorites. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know with the Bills because isn't this sort of what they wanted, right? They chose to move on from Diggs. They wanted to have this kind of like put together group. They got first rounder Keon Coleman. He made a couple of big catches, even in the blowout to the Ravens. I think what's interesting here is the timing, right? Because you mentioned Stephon Diggs. Well, guess who the Bills are playing this week? And guess what? What if Diggs comes out and drops a giant game? What if the Bills lose 2 games in a row to 2 of their top AFC contenders? Now the narrative swings a little bit. It's like, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't have moved on from Diggs. Maybe we should go get another receiver to replace him like Davante Adams. So I think you got the narrative swing here. I like it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And listen, Diggs was a bit of a diva in Buffalo. We kind of saw that down the stretch. Davante Adams is also one right now based on the way he's acting in Vegas. But the difference is that, Vegas is a trash can of a team, and the Bills are, one of the best in football. But the third best option, or your second favorite, I guess, option for Davante Adams is who, Brandon?
I gotta go against Adam Schefter here. I'm gonna take the Chiefs. I just feel like this is such an obvious fit where, to me, this is about Rashee Rice. I think Rashee Rice, we don't know yet what's happening with him. Really weird that it's been like half a week now and we don't have clear injury news. Certainly seems like he's out probably for the season as far as we can tell. And don't forget, no Hollywood Brown maybe till the playoffs, no Isaiah Pacheco till later on. The Chiefs just don't have a lot of weapons right now. I have a ranking of just kind of skill players, and the Chiefs are about 5th to 7th from the bottom of the league now that these guys are out. For reference, I have them below Pittsburgh and Carolina. That's not what you want for Patrick Mahomes on a Super Bowl year, trying to go a 3rd time in a row. I think Rashee Rice, if he is out, is a really big loss for them. They built the offense out of him, and Travis Kelce has not done a lot yet this season. They were really doing a lot with Rashee Rice. They need something here. Now, look, it's in the division. Are the Raiders really going to help the Chiefs? I get it. Like, that's why this is going to leak out, that there's no way they'll do it. But stranger things have happened. You know, why would we give Patrick Mahomes finally a Tyreek Hill replacement? Very different receiver, but man, that'd be scary.
Listen, it would be scary. It makes sense that the Chiefs are going to add at receiver. I do find it a little hard that the Raiders are just going to be like, here, take Davante Adams, unless they get something more than just the second that they're asking for. It almost feels like the Chiefs are more likely, I think, to get, an Amari Cooper or maybe even Tyreek Hill if the Dolphins are like, well, maybe we have to completely rebrand, redo everything with Tua's uncertainty that's been happening along the lines there, and they look absolutely awful with Snoop Huntley, Skylar Thompson, whatever they throw out. But it would be a mega super team if they're able to replace Rashee Rice with, oh, look what we found, Davante Adams. But my next team is going to follow Adam Schefter. You went against him. I'm going to go with him. Why not the New Orleans Saints here? Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Davante Adams. I think that's, arguably one of the best receiving rooms in football if they add Davante Adams. Rashid Shaheed is an elite deep threat, but that's kind of where he thrives. Chris Olave has an unreal separation score, and then you add in Davante Adams. Not only will that play action game that Kubiak likes to bring out be even more dominant, having Davante Adams and another receiver on the field, but I think it also helps with Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr having his boy. We already know how good and how happy Davante Adams is when Derek Carr is throwing him the football, the Fresno State connection. He gets fed a lot, and that's been one of the things that he's been upset about in Vegas is that his quarterbacks can't throw a football 10 yards, let alone to him accurately. So I think New Orleans is worth a look here. They're 2-2, should be 3-1. That game against the Falcons, they got a bit unfortunate with a couple of defensive touchdowns, but I think that this team has a lot to be happy about and that they are kind of a contender this year, could make the playoffs, and getting Davante Adams takes them to that next level of actually being a playoff team in a pretty bad South. What are your thoughts on the Saints?
Yeah, I think the Saints are interesting. They're a team that 2 weeks ago, they were the talk of the town, right? They come out, they drop 40 plus a couple games in a row to start the year. Clint Kubiak, will he even make it through the season? Let's give him a head coaching job right now, right? And now suddenly 2 weeks later, like, well, they're terrible again. Well, no, they're not terrible. They're injured. All their guys are injured. They're losing 2 offensive linemen. Kamara's playing hurt. Olave's playing hurt. Now Taysom Hill is hurt. The defense is getting hurt. I think the Saints are actually looking pretty good still. They're a team that I'm looking for some futures on. I would be curious if we could get some truth serum. I know Derek Carr would like to play with Davante Adams again. Are we positive Davante Adams would like to play with Derek Carr? I'd like to know. I will say this. For a little reverse slander here, Derek Carr goes to Kansas City Monday night. If the Saints get the win, as they've looked good, and they're 3-2, and then you give them Davante Adams, I think there's a 65-1 MVP ticket out there. I am seriously considering. Carr's been top 5 in EPA and CPOE. Those are good metrics for him. He's been really good. I think that would not be as outlandish as it seems.
Wow, that is very interesting. And if they do get the win, they have looked good. They're more than capable. The Chiefs also have kind of looked shaky down the stretch. Hence, the addition of Davante Adams would definitely help them on that front. It'll be interesting to see. And if they beat the Chiefs and then add Adams, it will be another level for New Orleans. But Brandon, the number 5 team for Davante Adams is who?
I'm going off the board here. I haven't heard this team even really mentioned at all, but I'm going to go with the team that we might think is the best team in the league right now, even the Baltimore Ravens. How about a sleeper here? To me, this is shades of Anquan Bolden. This is shades of Derek Mason. This is kind of how Baltimore does business, right? They don't necessarily go and get the diva in prime receiver, but how about the guy that's been really good, that's at the end of his career, but what if he's not at the end of his career? What if he got like 5 more good years? And we can just have this like veteran, solid target. Those are guys that just did good yeoman's work, gave good years to Baltimore. Give Lamar Jackson a real target for once. Enough Zay Flowers, all right? Zay Flowers for the bubble screens and all the little stuff. Enough with the tight ends. Give him an actual receiver with Lamar's running, with Derrick Henry, with the defense and the coaching staff. This has to be the Super Bowl favorite if they get Davante Adams. They might be anyways, but I don't know what you're doing to stop the team after that.
Yeah, I think the addition definitely makes them the Super Bowl favorite. But then, does Davante Adams want to go to Baltimore just to block on the outside like he's been doing in Vegas because they turned Mark Andrews from a tight end into a left tackle or right tackle. All of a sudden, Davante Adams might be just blocking rather than actually running routes. You would think in theory they add him, maybe things change. The offense should be passing more. But when you have Derrick Henry and he's looked that good, do you really need a guy like Davante Adams? That will be definitely interesting to see. That's my little pushback is like, maybe he doesn't want to be blocking all the time, or, it depends what Baltimore says with him. But I got one more, just a bonus team to throw out. Those are the top five that we drafted. But this is a team that we didn't expect to be all of a sudden in the mix, and now they are. How about the Washington Commanders? I mean, Jaden Daniels looks absolutely incredible through the opening month of the season. They have Terry McLaurin. They don't have a wide receiver too. Right now, it's just like Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Diami Brown. They don't really have someone else. And listen, I understand it's like, well, Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson, they have an elite run RPO offense. But, I mean, LSU with Jaden Daniels, they had multiple elite receivers. I think adding Davante Adams could take this team to the next level. And we always talked about, Brandon, you came on earlier this season, teams going from, last to first in the division, being able to win it. It feels like the Commanders are kind of on that path, and then all of a sudden you add Davante Adams to the mix, and this offense that's already been amazing just gets even better. What are your thoughts on that, or is this a little bit outlandish?
I don't think it's so outlandish. I think it depends on where Washington thinks they are on their curve. I think that this was supposed to be a rebuilding year, but maybe it's not. Dallas and Philly look worse than we expected so far. Washington certainly looks a lot better. Maybe they think this is their time. I think it's a little early still. The back half of their schedule coming up is going to be pretty tough. I guess what I'd like to know is, Davante Adams, how do you like bubble screens? Is that your game? Is that what you want to do? Just catch 3-yard passes and be a yak player from now on? This to me is like, this is a Cliff Kingsbury thing. I know it's been great. It's been fun. It's wonderful. When your buddy is like eyeing the girl that he wants to go out with, and you're just like, but we know some things about her. Like, that's Cliff Kingsbury in this. Like, Davante, don't go out with Cliff Kingsbury. This is not the spot for you, my friend. It's not going to age well. It's been a great month. September was fun. Just no, we know better than this. Don't do Cliff Kingsbury to yourself.
The honeymoon has been great for Washington, but I guess that phase might end soon, and then we're looking at the Commanders being like, 4, 5, and 9, and we're like, all right, well, maybe Cliff Kingsbury, but only time will tell on this front. Brandon Anderson, appreciate you hopping on, and excited to see what happens with Davante. Maybe we had this whole discussion just for him to stay in Vegas. Who knows?
Thanks for having me.
MLB senior analyst Sean Zerillo is coming off another successful regular season, finishing 2024 up nearly 26 units. And Action Pro gives you instant notifications each and every time he makes a pick in the Action app. Whether you're a dedicated baseball bettor or jumping on the bandwagon for the postseason, we've got an offer to celebrate the start of the MLB playoffs. Head over to actionnetwork.com/pro and use the promo code October for 15% off an Action Pro subscription. In addition to instant notifications on bets from Sean Zerillo and other Action experts, you also get daily projections on money lines, totals, strikeouts, and home run props, and much, much more. Once again, that's 15% off actionnetwork.com/pro using the promo code October. And just a reminder that any pick we give out here on the show, like the ones you heard from Anthony Dabbundo and Mike Calabrese and Brett and Collin, you can easily reference by following us in the award-winning Action Network app under the handle @green.daily. Everything is tracked there for your liking, so you eat track so you don't have to. And that's going to be all for this Wednesday edition of Green Daily. We'll be back here tomorrow to break down Thursday night football, and it's the start of football every single day till Thanksgiving Eve. So get ready, get strapped in. But until then, enjoy the postseason baseball. I'll be back here tomorrow at 3 Eastern. Peace.